The morning of January 20th, 1961, arrived cold and bright in Washington, and John Fitzgerald Kennedy, standing on the Capitol steps with his right hand raised, became the 35th President of the United States, while Dwight David Eisenhower, seated nearby, watched 8 years of his own legacy pass to a man nearly 3 decades younger. On the surface, it was a peaceful, ceremonial transfer of power, but beneath the handshakes and smiles, Kennedy inherited far more than nuclear codes and budget proposals. He inherited Eisenhower himself. Unlike most outgoing presidents who fade into retirement, Eisenhower maintained an office, staff, and critical security clearances, giving him access to the National Security Council, the nerve center of American foreign policy. And initially, Kennedy embraced the idea of consulting a man who had spent 8 years managing the Cold War, listening respectfully as Eisenhower briefed him on communist movements in Southeast Asia, Castro's grip on Cuba, and the delicate balance of tensions that could ignite a global conflict. Yet the National Security Council Eisenhower left behind, his bureaucratic masterpiece, expanded into a formal structure with subcommittees, planning boards, and a full advisory network, came with personnel whose loyalty was divided between the new president and the former. And Kennedy soon realized that his own vision of flexible response, counterinsurgency, and active engagement in Cuba conflicted with Eisenhower's cautious incrementalism and reliance on nuclear deterrence. This dynamic became painfully clear during the Bay of Pigs operation, inherited almost fully formed from Eisenhower's administration, where Kennedy, relying on assurances from CIA Director Allen Dulles and the Joint Chiefs, approved an invasion of Cuba that collapsed within 72 hours, leaving over 100 dead, nearly 1,200 in prison, and the president humiliated internationally, while the architects of the failure remained embedded in the bureaucracy, still briefing Eisenhower and undermining Kennedy's authority. The leaks began to surface. Republican Senators Barry Goldwater and Everett Dirksen, both maintaining deep connections with Eisenhower, received detailed briefings that aligned suspiciously with internal NSC discussions, and former Vice President Richard Nixon, nursing his 1960 election defeat, leveraged Eisenhower's insights to attack Kennedy politically. Kennedy's trust in inherited structures shattered. He replaced key officials with McGeorge Bundy, Robert McNamara, and Dean Rusk, but even that could not stop information from flowing through Eisenhower's informal networks to journalists and political allies, culminating in highly damaging leaks about Laos, Berlin, and Cuba that painted the young president as weak and indecisive. By the fall of 1961, Kennedy realized half measures wouldn't work. He restricted Eisenhower's access entirely, ending regular NSC briefings and operational intelligence sharing while providing only public-facing courtesy updates, a move that Eisenhower privately criticized through proxies and public speeches, emphasizing experience, judgment, and decisive action while implying Kennedy lacked them. The rupture between the two men was complete, leaving a frozen civility that masked deep mistrust. But Kennedy's hard-earned skepticism paid off when, in October 1962, U-2 reconnaissance flights discovered Soviet missiles in Cuba. Kennedy convened the ExComm Executive Committee, a small, tightly controlled group of loyal advisors, deliberately excluding anyone connected to Eisenhower's network. And over 13 tense days, he navigated a path between hawks, demanding military strikes, and diplomats urging negotiation, ultimately negotiating a secret deal where the Soviets removed their missiles and the United States quietly withdrew Jupiter missiles from Turkey. A diplomatic triumph, safeguarded by operational secrecy that Eisenhower could no longer compromise. This episode validated Kennedy's decision to control information and restrict former presidents from operational decision-making, a precedent every subsequent administration has followed, recognizing that while former presidents can provide institutional memory and perspective, they also maintain informal networks that can compromise national security or serve political ends. Kennedy's evolution from seeking approval from established figures to trusting his own judgment, born from the Bay of Pigs disaster and the leaks from Eisenhower's network, ultimately preserved humanity from nuclear catastrophe, demonstrating that controlling information, enforcing boundaries, and limiting inherited influence were not acts of arrogance, but of necessity, establishing a model of executive authority and information security that has endured for decades. A legacy forged in suspicion, political risk, and the near miss that almost ended the world.
Please don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon.